Well, I'll let you go. Right? It's not on the
Hello, Anita. Hello, Anita.
Hi, Bob.
How are you this evening?
I am good. So
Good.
I got us live streaming on YouTube.
Oh, wonderful. You succeeded.
I did. And we have
Yeah,
over 80 people registered for tonight.
80 people registered. Wow.
Yeah,
You and I are promoting it, but better.
I guess. I
Yeah,
hope other people are too as well.
yeah. Well, I hope we have Dan on board. It'd be good to have
No,
him.
he wasn't available.
Oh, well, that's too bad. Okay. Well, got to keep working on that. Okay. Scratch him off my list. Yeah.
Well, some people don't like to be busy after supper.
Well, I just have the way I look at it is this is in the middle of supper. So I have dinner and a couple glasses of wine, and then after this, then I really have dessert and
That's
an after
right.
dinner drink, a little bit of whiskey. You know.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, this really is remarkable, the turnout we have on nonprofits. And
Mhm.
I think we as a group have to truly think through what we can do more for this
Mhm.
segment.
Well, I think, I'm going to put together how to start a group home. I think
Yeah.
that is one thing that we have so many clients doing that. They might, I guess we'll have to think about maybe some other types of nonprofits that we could focus on.
Well, we should have a pretty good email list of nonprofit attendees, and maybe we survey them.
Yeah, that's a
and
good
ask,
idea.
What issues could we get into more depth?
Mhm.
One thing I'm thinking of, we certainly could bring David Holmes in and have one on the resources he has available.
Well, I've often had him come when I do the grant
Right.
one, have him come and demonstrate the database. He
Mhm.
doesn't particularly like to,
Yeah, I know, that's right.
you
That's
know,
right.
he likes to just do the demonstration.
Yeah, because between the demonstration and doing the assessment would be
Yeah,
a good standalone, so, yeah. Camera shy, huh?
I guess. I don't know why. I mean, he speaks well and he does a great job of demoing the database.
Yeah.
I
Well,
had a client today though, or yesterday, I guess, who went to the Cleveland Heights Library, which has the access to the
SBDC.
database.
Oh,
And
okay.
she said it was very, well, first of all, she had a hard time at the Heights Library getting the password to get onto it. She said she talked to most people, didn't know what she was talking about. And then she said the access was very limited. And I said, that doesn't make sense. It's never been that way. I know at Westlake, they actually give a class in how to use the database.
Oh, well, maybe if you and I had a conversation and bring in Dan maybe with David and just tell him the kind of phenomenal results. And let's talk about maybe he has some other suggestions.
Yeah, that
There
could
could be
be.
somebody else in his organization that'd be willing
Well,
to.
I'm thinking it was probably the Heights Library.
Yeah, but I'm just
I have not
in
found
general.
the Cleveland Heights Library very friendly. I've done webinar seminars there, and they're very particular, I guess. They don't want to give you any support at all as far as equipment. They want you to bring everything in, and they said, make sure that you leave the room exactly like you found it. And they just weren't very friendly. Although I spoke with, I don't know if she's still there, the director at the library when she was fairly new. Her name was Ann something. And she was very interested in us doing the how to grow your business, simple steps. And then she said there was a guy there who would actually work with me to set it up and do the arrangements. And I contacted him. He wouldn't respond. I phoned him. He just blew me off. He said, I don't think that's really something we can do.
Are they part of the Cleveland County library system?
I think so.
And the only reason I'm bringing up is Westlake, for example, and Rocky River and Euclid are independent. The units that are part of the county, we have tried to work with them, and we just don't get anywhere. And Tom Rich's daughter is actually like the #2 person at the county library. She set up an introduction with the people in charge of their adult education, and he had no interest.
Yeah, that's strange. Yeah, well, I think there is an SBDC at the library.
Yeah, right.
And I spoke with the director there who's since retired. There's somebody else there now.
Oh, it's not the lady was it Amy Van Dyke or something like that?
It might be. There was a guy there before.
Oh no, she's pretty young, but she sends us a lot of clients, particularly nonprofits.
Okay, well, anyway, when I spoke with him, he said they were just in the process of getting that done. That's when they were redoing all the stuff at the Heights Library. And he said that he would be glad to have us use their facility, the SBDC, if we wanted to mentor there. So I'm assuming that you didn't want to control the slides tonight either. Are you frozen?
Moving, yeah, state SBDC. So anyhow, here we go. Wow, I'm excited. I'm giving you a warning right now. It says my internet is unstable. Don't know what that means.
You were frozen there for a bit. Well, if you freeze up, I'll just go on.
Seeing that you wrote this, you composed this, I think you know it better than I do. So.
I don't know, you know, you do these things and they get modified by so many different people. You just,
Yeah. Well, you got to really go back through the slides and see what, you
yeah,
know, whether it's consistent, whether you're comfortable with them. The one we did on Tuesday, I found some things that made no sense and I had to change them.
yeah, well, and that's the important thing, I think, is to keep going over it and updating it and making sure that it's relevant.
Yeah. Well, the shared drive works great, and it tells you the latest one.
It does.
Yeah, you got this set up very well.
Yeah, I really don't like the ones where, you know, people just keep doing this exactly the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah, well, it's laziness.
Yeah.
You and I are not lazy, so.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit the start button.
Wonderful.
There we go. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the score slides since
Yeah, well, there's a lot of slides. There's more slides than the other day.
a lot of the same people.
Yeah, and there's a lot of slides.
Yeah, there are. Hi, Michael, you raised your hand. You can talk if you unmute yourself.
Oh no, I was just calling in. I just
Okay.
joining the meeting. I didn't know if you posted.
Nice to have you on board.
Thank you for doing this.
Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started with the score slides. So welcome to all of you who have arrived. We probably will have some more people joining us over the next couple minutes, but since many of you have been with us for the previous two sessions, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the score slides. I will say, we've been around for a long time, over 50 years, and we've been doing the same thing for that long, and we've helped over 11 million people. So we think that's good, although I don't know that just helping people is our main thing. We hope to start businesses and help create jobs. That's really our bottom line. So our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. And we hope that every person who starts a small business has the kind of support and resources they need to be successful. So we don't feel that we are successful unless you as our clients are successful. We offer free business advice through one-on-one mentoring, and we offer our webinars, which we actually do not ever charge for. But we also have a tremendous website where we share a lot of business templates and other types of resources. We also list there all of our upcoming webinars, so you can go there and sign up directly from the website. We're in process of setting up a YouTube channel with the recordings of all our webinars. So hopefully that will be ready in the next couple of weeks. So just so you know that we're part of a network across the country with over 10,000 volunteers. So if you have an interesting business that we don't have the expertise here in Cleveland, we can call on one of those 10,000 people to help you instead. So the wonderful thing about having access to everybody across the nation and using virtual meetings has really helped us expand our ability to help you, and we're pleased with that. So these are some statistics that I think are pretty impressive. This is for all of SCORE, not just Cleveland. So with that being said, I'm going to leave our webinar up to Mr. Fedor, who is going to be taking over. Bob is one of our nonprofit experts, and we're delighted that he's willing to spend time with us tonight and give you all this wonderful information. So, Bob.
Well, thank you, Anita. Yeah, my name is Bob Fedor, and for those that took Tuesday's webinar on starting a nonprofit in Ohio, I presented that. And like Tuesday, Anita Kayat, who's on this call, just did the introduction. She and I have 15 years of experience at SCORE. SCORE is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3. Now, I don't know if all of you, probably not all of you, took the session on Tuesday or the session last Thursday. This is actually the third session. The first one presented by Dan Yerman was general introduction to nonprofits. And do you know what it takes to start and to make sure you understand it's not a trivial exercise. The second one, which we did Tuesday, is on how to form a nonprofit in Ohio, how to get your IRS tax exemption status, and how to get a board and plan for going ahead. Today is on fundraising. We stressed on Tuesday that a huge issue is looking for funding opportunities. At least it's the biggest challenge, as we'll talk about over and over today, of a nonprofit, is how to get the money to run your nonprofit. And I'm fortunate that I've had 15 years experience fundraising for SCORE, both in the Pennsylvania area around Philadelphia and here in Cleveland, the last 5 years here in Cleveland, Northeastern Ohio. And also Anita, who's sharing this panel with me today. She has a lot of experience working with the fund and grants area. I just want to say up front, and we'll state it again, next Tuesday, Anita will be leading the charge, talking about how to grow and how to make your nonprofit efficient. And then next Thursday, a week from today, will be specifically on grant writing and details of that. I hope to share the panel with her on those. So today, our objectives are to look for where to look for funding opportunities, how to identify the opportunities relevant to your particular business, and things to consider about individual donations. Now, next slide. This is a general statement. Up to 50% of time and effort should go to this effort if you do not have the ability to charge service fees. We'll talk about charging service fees. I would have to say, even if you charge service fees, a lot of nonprofits still have to go out and raise additional money, particularly if they have capital programs for specific initiatives. In order to survive, you have to have sufficient funds. The thing you don't want to get into is, and if you understood the first session, the second session, you put money in, you can't take money out on your behalf. So if you're starting a nonprofit, you have to depend on getting funds from outside unless you're extremely wealthy and able to fund it yourself. Next slide. Now, what are the nonprofit sources of funds? Service fees and sales of goods are about half of total revenue for public charities. Another 25% came from government contracts. So if you add those two, it's almost 75% comes from selling either your services to the government, any government, or you're selling goods and services. And we'll give examples in the next slide. So charitable giving only accounts in general for about 25% of nonprofit revenues. Now, examples of fee for services, of course, hospitals bill patients, and yes, hospitals for the most part are 501c3s. Museums ask for admission fees, theaters sell tickets, civic organization charge dues, colleges require tuition, high school, a lot of private schools require tuition. These are all fees for service. And as I said, though, even if they cover these fees for service, cover a big portion of their costs, they almost always have separate fundraising activities for special projects, particularly capital projects. So you never get out of the issue of fundraising. An example of fee for service selling products is the Girl Scouts, most famous, and Girl Scout cookies, they are extremely successful. Only about 27%, so almost 75% goes to supporting the Girl Scouts activities. Now, another good example here in Cleveland, public radio, public TV, WBIZ has an annual auction. Many people participate in that. You get subsidized videos or CDs or, all kinds of little gifts if you donate to WBIZ. You can also have balls or dinners where admissions include a sizable donation. A lot of SCORE chapters have dinners, award luncheons where they sell tables and get admissions, and that goes to their overhead, pays for their overhead. You hear a lot of charitable 5Ks, 10K runs, buddy walks, certainly, for cancer. And of course, there's the American Heart Association, Heart Ball. There's all kinds of ways to have selling products and events to raise money. Next slide. So when you look at the dollars, 2021, 2022 isn't over yet, so we only have 2021. Almost $500 billion charitable giving. That's a huge amount of money. We have an economy around 30 trillion. So quick one, So that's 1/60th. So that's like percentage and a half of all the economy is charitable giving of the GDP. And of that, individuals, believe it or not, gave 67%. Foundations 29%, and corporations only about 4%. And this is a point I really want to stress. Most important to diversify. One of the things you don't want to do, and I'll be talking about this more, I hope, in other slides, is depend on one source of funding. It's, because one source can dry up overnight and you'd be left in deep doo-doo. Frankly, about 5 years ago, Cleveland scored, and I don't think I stated this up front. We are a 501c3, and so our activities are analogous to you folks in the audience, and our experience is relevant. But we about 5 years ago were very dependent on Cleveland Foundation, and they stopped funding for their own priority reasons, and we were in trouble, and had a hard time keeping our administrative capability intact in our marketing. And the answer to that is don't depend on one. If you need, for example, $50,000 to operate, instead of getting 1 or 2 donors, it'd be much better to get 10 at $5,000 than 1 at 50 or 2 at 25, because you're not that vulnerable. In this space, donors don't last long. They often change their priorities, and some foundations, like Cleveland Foundation I mentioned, they'll have a 3-year time frame on a grant, and they expect you after that time frame to be able to fund yourselves through other money. They just get you going. So you really have to diversify your source of funds. Next slide. Distribution. Where do these charitable dollars go? Religion is the biggest one. Education, human services, grant-making foundations, private society benefit. The good news is, despite COVID, almost every sector went up, with double-digit growths in gifts, specifically for arts, culture, and humanities, 27% increase, public society benefit, and environmental areas. During COVID, things really changed. And for example, Cleveland Foundation, while they weren't willing to give to us during COVID, they increased to like the Cleveland Food Bank and other social services, which from a priority standpoint, because of COVID, they felt it was much greater need than in adult education. Next slide. Now, when you look at individual giving, and that's where most of the dollars are, we believe in what's called the Pareto principle. 20% of the donors give about 80% of the money. And you have to identify who your highest yield donors are, and you have to be donor focused. Well, just, this is marketing 101, really, fundraising and working with donors. And what you learn in marketing is existing clients, existing customers, existing donors are the easiest one to get repeat business from. It's very hard to get new donors and new customers. So when you have a good donor, you have to communicate with them. You tell them how you're doing. You can't constantly tell them your progress and the needs, future needs. So the best you can do is, once you start getting donors, is communicate with them. Make sure that you're completely transparent. And because as a 501c3, and I hope you all understand what that is, we went into that in depth on Tuesday, you will report once a year, Form 990 to the IRS. And that gives every bit of data on your your finances. So if you want to be tax deductible, you have a 501c3, you have to be transparent. And so your donors can see that. And the best thing for you to do is make sure those reports are good, and that you continue to tell your donors the good job you're doing and what your future needs are. Now, individual giving. You must have budget projections up to date and available to show potential donors. Now, when I'm fundraiser, one of the fundraisers for Cleveland Score, I always have with me a set of handouts. The latest data I could find showing the impact of Cleveland Score, and able to say what the new initiatives we have going on. That's extremely important. It is marketing, it is sales. If you don't like doing it, you're going to have to find somebody that does like doing it, because that's what it takes. Now, the second bullet, re-examine your case for need. COVID-19, as I said, like with the Cleveland Foundation, a lot of foundations, a lot of companies with private foundations and individuals changed their donations, their charitable giving, because the sense was we had a catastrophe, the pandemic, and that the needs of people, such as the food bank, were so much greater than pre-COVID. So you have to be aware of that. And in our case, we had to pivot away from the foundation, find news sources that were still willing to work with us. So the bottom line of this, and this is dynamic, meaning it changes. Your donor recruitment and fundraising is very high priority. You have to dedicate a staff, at least one half-time person. Now, Score is a big operation, but I spend probably 50% of my time on fundraising, if not more. And that's just what it takes to keep an organization going. Now, another way of individual giving is decentralized, and it's through the internet. It's called crowdfunding. Some of you have heard of it. This is particularly useful after tragedy or some noteworthy event where you can, because of a crisis, because of a tragedy, you can go out and get people to give you money. It's usually a short-term goal. You set a goal for your nonprofit. You tell your story. You tell them how you're going to use the funds. You try to involve your supporters to get the word out. And the more you can do through video to demonstrate the plight that you're trying to resolve or mitigate, the better you are. Now, next slide. You must communicate to be successful with crowdfunding. You have to have obviously a very good email database. You have to text people. You have to share on social media. You might find it easier to hire somebody to do this. It might cost you $300-400 a month to get a service to do that if you're not capable of doing it. When you accept donations, you have to thank them. You have to withdraw funds and pay them. And the one thing is, it takes time and effort to do this. And I'm not really aware of many successful nonprofit crowdfundings in the Cleveland area. There's been a few, but it's a challenge. Now, if you want to look at crowdfunding, here's some sites. Again, you're going to have these slides sent to you. You don't have to write them down, but here's 6 crowdfunding sites. Most are free to use, but they take a percentage of the donation as their fee. Next slide. Now, this I think is very important. Many nonprofits overlook legacy gift, I'll just say there's 3 areas here. Number one, people like me who have retired and have IRAs, they're required after age 70 and a half to withdraw a certain percentage of that every year of that IRA. And that withdrawal is completely taxable to me unless I give it to charity. And that many people find this, it's called RMD, required minimum distribution, that if you can identify the potential donors that have RMDs, who intend to use RMDs, it's a wonderful way for them to give. They get the tax reduction exemption, and you get the money, but you have to make sure that you identify who can do that. Another way is qualified distributions, funding distributions through a brokerage. Some people, and it doesn't matter what their age is, they feel that they don't want to decide on how they want to do their charitable giving. So they set up this fund with a brokerage, and along with the brokerage, they'll decide on where that money should go. And then there's a third one that most people don't realize. A lot of people who are working give to United Appeal or United Way. And it's often a requirement of their job. That at least there's a lot of pressure on white collar workers to participate in these programs at many companies. Well, people don't realize any 501c3 can get money from the United Way, and they take a small commission from it. And SCORE has gotten funds that way, where people can distribute their United Way to SCORE or to any nonprofit. So you, as a nonprofit, you have to be aware that these programs exist, and you have to educate your potential donor base that that's a way that they can use their they can fund you while using their charitable giving. Next slide. Okay, what we're going to talk about is granting sources. There's corporate giving programs for nonprofit startups. There are not a lot of those. There's grant giving private foundations. There's a lot of those. Federal nonprofit grant programs and endowments we'll talk about. There's a lot of state, even county and city funded grants. And we'll also give you some bonus tips on startup grants. Now, Matt, one of the things that people don't realize is, and this is why it comes down to marketing 101, you got to understand who you're talking to about giving your donation. You have to ask the donor if they're an employee of a company that matches. Or on the other hand, many companies also have programs where they encourage their employees or their retirees to volunteer for nonprofits. They get credit for that. So those are, I think the next slide gives some examples of how big a deal this is. There's an estimated $4 to $10 billion a year in matching gifts that goes unclaimed. 65% of the largest companies offer matching gifts. Over 18 million people. The workforce is probably 160. So 10% of the individuals work for companies with matching gift programs. And at least $2 to $3 billion are donated through these. And the interesting things, donors say they're more likely to donate, and they'll give a larger gift if they know that matching is applied. So this is a synergy. If you could find one donor, for example, who works for IBM or ExxonMobil, or we'll show you a list, General Electric. You know, and they're willing to maybe give $1,000. Well, they might be able to get $2,000 in matching, or if it's 5,000, they could get 5,000 more in matching, whatever. That's a big deal. So, but it's up to you. I mean, they may not know, but it's up to you to push. And when you identify donors, to find out where do they work and do they have programs. I think the next slide gives some of the, yeah, here we go. General Electric, BP, Gap, ExxonMobil, Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft. Those are typical, you know, they'll match very significant amount of money. Now, in my experience at SCORE, we've had ConocoPhillips, we've had IBM. SCORE here has IBM in Cleveland. We have a retiree that gets matching money from their company. I think the next slide even shows more. No, okay. Now we're going to go from the corporate to the private foundations. Private foundations exist to better society by supporting nonprofits. That's their mission. They make grants rather than directly running charitable activity. There's many of them, small and large. SCORE works, for example, with Odie Foundation, Gould Foundation, Nordson Foundation. We've worked with Sherwin-Williams. Key has a foundation. All the banks have foundations. All the major companies have privately funded foundation. They will have different priorities. Sherwin-Williams is not really good for SCORE because they're focused on children and improving the lot of impoverished children. On the other hand, Nordson Foundation is a good fit for us because they are big in Lorain County, and they want to improve the general economic condition of Lorain County. So we find that a very good match for us. Next slide. Now what do you do when you identify private foundations? And we'll talk about how you get a list of them. You know, you're going to have to send them a cover letter of inquiry, often an email if you can identify who the person is. A business, it's that phrase, business plan. That's why you need a SCORE mentor. Description of your mission and the need. What's your budget? What's your financials? Complete the program. And most of these are online applications nowadays. A few aren't, the smaller ones aren't, but most of the reasonable size foundations are all online and almost all use the same general format. Now, there is a note, as I said before, it's about the third time I'm saying it. COVID screwed up in my mind, changed the priorities of many nonprofits. So you really have to see if they're still interested in your area so it's about matching their current interest with your mission. And you have to do the work to find these people that can do that. Next slide. Again, here's some of the private companies that have huge foundation. You know, I think every major company has a foundation now, but here's some of they're very large. For example, Wells Fargo has $286 million in it. We did get money from Wells Fargo a few years back. Then they reorganized and said that Cleveland was doing fine, but you know, you know, this is the way it goes. You might get money from a foundation for 1 or 2 or 3 years, and then they decide they have other priorities. And you just have to be flexible. And that's why I started out this talk about diversification. You cannot sit back, even though existing donors are the easiest one to renew and the most important ones to renew. You can't count on them, and certain percentage of them will drop off every year, maybe 1 out of every 5, believe it or not. Next slide. Okay, now if you want to find who is given grants. www.grants.gov. You can find all the federal government grants through that site. But the same thing exists with the county, with the state of Ohio, city of Cleveland. You have to go out and see who has grants. And these grants come and go. Again, during the pandemic, the amount of grants increased tremendously because of the COVID money that flowed from Congress to various agencies down to to the municipalities and various governments. For example, just this week, Cuyahoga County announced 55 $10,000 grants for small businesses. That money's still flowing out. Now they weren't for nonprofits, unfortunately. The nonprofits didn't even qualify for it. But you have to look for where are nonprofit grants being available. And this is one great website. Next slide. Other ones, the National Endowment for Arts, for Humanities, as I said, state and city government websites, each state council of National Endowment for Humanities, we're going to bring up Candid. It has a database of foundations, and Candid has one of their major offices here in Cleveland, down at Playhouse Square, and a fellow by the name of David Holmes is a good contact there. And you could either go down there or through some libraries, and Anita, maybe you could comment on this. You can get to it. I believe it is fee-based, that you have to pay some money, but they have the database. They can say, you could say, this is my mission, and they could tell you who is funding.
No, actually, with the database, if you go to the Candid website, it is expensive to use a database, but there are a number of libraries that have free access, and they will show you how to use the database, and you can drill down pretty fine to look at organizations that will fund your project. The Cleveland Public Library is one of the primary ones, and you have to go downtown and actually go to the library, but they'll sit with you and show you how to use it. And there are, I think, 6 or 7 others: Westlake Library, I think Euclid Library, Cleveland Heights, I'm not so sure about. But you can call your local library and ask if they have the access to the database. And if they do, then you can go into the library and use it. And it does have a list of all the private foundations. So it's a really nice resource. Instead of going to a lot of different places, there's one place there that will get you the information that you need.
So what Anita is saying is the library pay the fee,
right,
for that capability, as opposed to you just dealing directly with Candid. Now you can work directly with Candid, and they'll assign a person to help you, but there's a fee.
Yeah.
Associated.
Another thing that Candid has that you should be aware of is they have classes.
Right.
In starting a nonprofit, they have classes on how to write grants. So you should check their website and look at all the things that they offer besides just the database. You can also find out information on other nonprofit organizations. So it's a good resource.
Okay, now here's a list of 4 more websites that you should look at. One comes through the SBA and takes you to the grants.gov. There's the City of Cleveland. There's Candid, as we mentioned, so it's the same one. And there's the state of Ohio. which talks about grants, loans, tax incentives specific to Ohio.
Excuse me. The Ohio one is, you should check fairly often, because when they get a bolus of money, they'll offer grants in a particular area, but when the money's gone, it's gone. So you have to keep checking their website to see what's available at any given time. And I think kind of the same thing with the city of Cleveland.
Yes, yes.
So it's something that, you know, maybe once a month you go to the website and check to see what's new, and see if it's something that's relevant for you.
Okay, now, I am not a woman. Anita is. Anita, do you have experience with any of these?
Amber Grant, I've had some clients apply to Amber Grant. They're pretty rapid in giving money. There's a lot of competition, and you have to keep applying. So I just tell them, you know, go to the website, look at what's required, and don't hesitate to keep applying. And I would say that's true for any of these grants. Don't give up. If you apply once and they reject you, apply again.
Anita, I assume all these are online?
Yes, they are. And some of them, some of them are very specific about what they'll fund. So you have to go to each one of them and look and see, does it apply to me? I think FedEx, you have to have some relative that works for FedEx. So there are some that are very particular, but they're all worth looking at. The Angels is another one that's pretty good as far as funding. So again, it's a matter of, as Bob says, what their objectives are, and if your business meets their objectives, then it's worth applying. If you're not eligible, don't apply, because it's just not worth it.
Now, we assume that every nonprofit, every business should have a website. The question is, do you have a donation page on your website? And why should you? Well, the next slide will show that it's a very productive way of getting donations. 23% increase per year on online giving, 38% of repeat donors, which goes back to my point. Repeat donors are golden, and you have to communicate with them. So online monthly giving, where you not only ask for a one-time, but you're giving up monthly. You see a lot of ads on cable TV for monthly giving for various charities, you know, Tower to where is it? Anyhow, for wounded warriors and things like that. Or
a lot of organizations now are just really pushing for monthly donations instead of one lump sum.
And it makes sense, because instead of saying, or maybe $100, you're saying, can you give $9 a month?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
well, and people tend to swallow the lower amount more easily than, you know, writing a check for $500 is a lot harder than giving $10 a month.
So the question is, no, that's all right.
Sorry.
Next slide. Yeah. What is the perfect donation page, and how you can raise more money than ever? Well, you know, you need to, the thing about donation page and social media and websites is you have to engage. I think most of you should be aware that people have an extremely short tolerance for looking at a page, website page, and you have to engage people instantly when they see it. And that, again, it goes back to marketing. And the next slide will this is a cute Dilbert. Dilbert happens to be my favorite cartoon, but if the process is too slow, too complicated, it doesn't work. You know, if people take too much time to explain, you know, there's no patience for it. Now, this is a very strong one that I do donate online, and absolutely I will not create an account to make a donation. It does, very few people will go through with it, because when you have to create an account, you have to give information that most people don't really want to give. And this is a bad idea.
And yet, on the other hand, you know, once you make a donation, you have to give them the information so that you get your receipt. So you ultimately get the information anyway.
Right.
But you're
But
not.
people are turned off if you ask for it up front before you decide on
Absolutely.
making the
Absolutely.
donation.
So,
So once they decide to make you a donation, they'll give you the information.
right.
So you have to keep a donation page as concise as possible. Try to use video. Ensure your branding is consistent with the rest of your website. How are you going to use the money? You have to be transparent. And this is another thing. Almost 2/3 of the people now, I believe, are doing it through a mobile phone as opposed to a desktop or a computer. You have to make sure that it's optimized for mobile. And you have to instantly come back and thank any donor that comes through.
One thing I will mention, that when we say tell how the money will be used, a lot of times, if you can say, if you donate $50, that will buy 3 backpacks for kids for school supplies, or you'll purchase 2 blankets, or you'll feed 50 people. So if you can personalize how the money's being used, people are more likely to donate. So keep that in mind.
And if you want to use SCORE as an example, one thing I tell people is if we have, last year we created, 400 jobs, if we can recruit more mentors and spend more money on marketing, we'll create not 400 jobs, but 400 new businesses. Maybe it's 500 new business. So you could set up a mathematical for every dollar that you get, what is the impact on your missions outcome? Yeah, and this some of the technicalities.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and you may need to help. You got to make sure your donation page runs on multiple platforms, and it often doesn't. And you got to make sure your website's secure, because you're collecting data, financial data. So you may well need to have a consultant, and SCORE can help you a bit to make sure that you have an absolutely transparent and secure system.
Right. And you should also make sure that you have a donate button on every page on your website that leads to your donor page. So a call to action on each page.
Okay, we have a few bonus tips. I think Anita put these together, but yeah, but I really believe in this one. Find an established nonprofit similar to your own. Reach out, introduce yourself, ask about its early days. You want to understand what worked for them. Now, what I do at SCORE, there's 40 other chapters around the country. I reach out to them often and find out who are your donors, are they national donors, what works, what doesn't work. So it's very simple for SCORE, because there's we are cloned 240 times around the country. But there's also other nonprofits serving, small businesses that I keep in touch with and see how they're getting money, what programs are they doing, even though they may be competitive to us. It works. And I'll give you an example. We have a sister chapter in Akron, and I was looking at the website. I see, oh, they get money from First Energy. Gee, I never thought of going to First Energy. So I'm in the process now. In fact, it's been accepted as a application. They're very interested in supporting Cleveland Score, and I had no idea if I didn't look out into Akron to see they had something with First Energy. You just never know. Again, this is marketing. This is looking out for qualified donors. Qualified donors are the ones that are already giving to like-minded charities. And that's who you have to identify.
There are other benefits too of networking with similar nonprofits, because you can pick up operational hints and recruitment for volunteers, all types of information that might be useful. So it's a good strategy.
Well, and we also talk about, just extending that thought, Anita, that we talked about last time, that if you're not really established and you're sort of a startup nonprofit, you can associate with an existing one and help. You can both raise funds and use their 501c3 as you're getting started. So finding partnerships is the best way to get off the ground in this business.
I actually had a client today that I referred. She wanted to start a business, and I have a client who had already started a similar business. So I contacted the client that has the business operating and asked if she would be interested in talking to my new client, because it seemed like they were very synergistic. So if it works out, the new client would not have to apply for her 501c or C3, and she should be able to get started with the things that she wants to do much more quickly. So
yeah, that's an excellent suggestion. Now, this is a technicality you may or may not be aware of, but once you apply to the IRS, you can start securing your funding. You can tell them you've applied, and they will get credit for it. This is a little surprising that exists, but that is a fact. So you don't have to wait until you get your formal notification of your 501c3 to start your fundraising.
right, it's retroactive to the day that you submit your application. Oops, was that the last slide?
Maybe.
Oh,
No, that's your.
I clicked on the IRS link.
Okay.
Sorry about that. So, okay.
Oh yeah, grant writing. Practice your grant writing skills. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is next Thursday at 7 o'clock, Anita is going to go into incredible depth on this subject. Now, personally, I do the grant writing for SCORE, most of it. I think maybe last few years, all of it. And don't hand this off to somebody that doesn't really understand your organization or your mission. You can hire people to do it, but you really have to explain to them what you're doing. You also can't, and like in our case, we have new members. If I ask them to write a grant application, say, for example, to KeyBank, they won't know the background to be able to write it. It takes time. Typically, it takes me at least 2 days of work, depending on the particular site, and some are more complicated. Unfortunately, in your proposal, there's a lot of boilerplate has to be put in. included, both on your organization, on the demographics you're serving, lots of details. It depends on the target clients that you have. Who are you serving? They're going to want to know all the census data about that, and it takes a lot more digging than you think to answer these questions on these portals. What's happened in the last 10 years? This used to be a fairly informal. You write a request. You think you put all the information in, and maybe they give you some guidelines. But now almost every foundation has an online portal that they get from a national organization that has standardized questions that go in a lot of detail on your organization and on your market. Now, we mentioned Candid before. They do have grant writing classes and for fee that somebody that's certainly worthwhile. Now, we at SCORE, we have a team of including Anita and I and probably 3 or 4 others who have had experience in it. So if you want to do it, we won't write it for you, but we sure as heck would comment on your grant writing and help you optimize it.
And interestingly enough, some of the organizations ask for interesting information, like what's your diversity and inclusion policy?
Yeah.
What are you doing about the impact of climate change? So, you ought to look at the application and then spend some time thinking about how to address some of the odd questions that they come up with.
It's not as straightforward as you would think, and it is what it is, and you have no choice because foundations now find it very easy to force you into these online portals and these general questions, and you don't know which ones they take more seriously than the others, to be honest with you. And the other thing that I'm sure Anita will go in next Thursday, almost always there's a word limit or a character limit on every segment. And believe me, when they tell you you have only 200 or 500 characters to summarize your mission and your program, it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you learn to be very efficient in your writing.
Okay, so this is a notification that next Tuesday, Anita will be leading building capacity for your nonprofit. I call it efficiency, improving the results, all the things about operating a nonprofit that you really want to know about. And then again on Thursday, next Thursday, same time, same place, grant writing basics. I hope to join Anita on both these, and she and I can provide our insights. Great turnout tonight, folks, and we really appreciate it. I think
Alice is saying that she often downloads questions into Word, answers them, and then copies them back and cut and paste, and that's a smart thing to do.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I have found out, and this is interesting, for example, at First Energy and at PNC, where I'm working on right now, once you know who is on the committee, who's running it, you can ask them, can I send you a draft? And they'll comment it. And give you an example, I did that first time. I never submitted any to First Energy. And she said, no, that's not what we want. That'll never get approved. You know, you're talking all about marketing. We won't fund marketing. And I said, okay. So I had to change focus. But this is all back to marketing 101 when you're trying to get a grant. If you can develop a dialogue with the foundation that you're targeting, it's golden. It's worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. And a lot of times you can call the program director if they're listed But with some of the foundations, it's not clear who's actually reviewing the grants. But with others, they will actually list the people who are the reviewers.
Mhm.
So
Here we go.
no questions.
I doubt that.
So I don't see any. So,
Now let's wait a second.
oh, we have a few people raising their hands. Erica, you can unmute if you would like to say something. Erica Jones.
Yes. How do you make yourself known to get on the donations list?
Oh,
do you-
well, you know what Bob says in marketing. That's the issue. You have to figure out how to raise awareness of who you are and what you do. And a lot of times that means personal visits to organizations, having literature available, you know, participating in any kind of public relations. If you have any kind of a press release that you can put out, it's a challenge.
Yeah, I think you got, in today's environment, you got to start with a very good website, and then you have to come up with a social media campaign to get people to go to your website.
Yeah, I mean, it's just marketing. There's no, I mean, that's how you have to spend, you know, we're saying spend half of your time raising funds and the other half doing marketing. But when you're new, so much of what you can accomplish is a result of making people aware of who you are and what you do and how you can help them. Or how you can help somebody if they give you money. It's a constant chronic issue.
But I would certainly say a SCORE mentor. We have many SCORE mentors that are very good at marketing.
Absolutely.
Both traditional marketing and social, digital marketing. And request a SCORE mentor. And even if you get a nonprofit mentor, we can co-mentor with a marketing specialist who can focus on your particular needs.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you guys so much.
Oh, you're welcome. So, all right. So, let's see. Here's a question. My wife and I are starting a nonprofit built around bringing dental, medical and wellness, fitness, and life skill services to underserved communities. It's a big venture and will take some employees that will need paid. When looking for funding, how do we, to incorporate salary needs into funding requests? Yeah. Again, and as we said during the presentation, you should have a budget projection for, say, for the next year. What are you raising money for? And if you have to pay salaries, that's part of your program. So it should be in your budget. So there's nothing, just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean you can't pay salaries. You can't or shouldn't pay your board members necessarily, but people who do work for your organization should get paid in the same way they would get paid if they were working for a non or a for-profit.
Yeah. Think of hospitals. Think of hospitals. They have all the high price salary people, and they're still nonprofits.
That's right. That's right. There's nothing wrong with paying people who are involved in your program. What grantors often complain about is administrative stuff. And if you look at any of the databases that monitor nonprofit organizations and rate them as far as being charitable organizations, they want to see that you spend less than 25% of your money on administration and support, that
Yeah.
at least 75% goes to your program. But
Yeah.
part of that program can be salaried individuals.
You know, I am familiar with a nonprofit that provides dental and then eventually medical help to underserved. Not in Cleveland, it's in another area. They started out by using volunteers because the mission was so demanding, so saleable. And then once they got volunteers, they were able to then hire staff, you know, a year down the way. Because very hard, if you're starting off, it's very, very hard to get money from foundations. You really have to figure out how to bootstrap. And volunteer is the best way possible.
Right. Okay, Cora's asking, how many grants should an organization apply for typically? As many
Well,
as.
let me answer that. You should, let's go back to what Anita said. You should have a business plan, a budget for the next year. And you should, you know, let's say that you absolutely need $50,000. Well, you're going to probably have to go out and target 3 times as many dollars as you think you're going to get, because, you know, a 1/3 is a real good success rate. You may only get 1/5. But you got to start out by what you're planning. You can't say, well, I need 50,000 next year. I'm going to settle for 50,000 in grant requests, because then you're only going to get $10,000. Well,
Well, and keep in mind, you know, there's nothing wrong with applying to a number of different organizations for exactly the same program. If you happen to get funded for one and they don't fund it totally, and another one will fund you as well, you can use money from both as long as they don't overlap.
well, and as we talked about last week, the cycle to get funding is so long, 9 to 12 months.
Right.
You always have to have a lot of funding requests going, because, and you have to put them in, you know, they never line up perfectly. And you have to have funds coming when the other ones will run out. And it's a challenge. It's you have to manage the flow, the cash flow in, and always, there's a rule of thumb, at least for our nonprofit, for SCORE, is to have about 1 year of our basic operating cost in the bank. In case we lose our funding, we could at least exist for a year while we're scrambling to get more funding. If you're dealing with less than a year's of your operating budget in available funds, you're going to be scrambling to survive. I think you're going into that next Tuesday a bit, aren't you?
Yeah, probably. Laura's asking if we have a budget template on the SCORE website, and yes, we do. We have a financial template, but again, if you have a SCORE mentor, that person can help you as far as helping you allocate how your expenses should be identified in your budget.
It really isn't any different than for a for-profit business.
No, and we will talk about that when we do the grant writing basics.
Hey, I have a question.
Sure.
With the nonprofit business, the correct way to go about it is you should start doing fundraising first, then actually to fund the programs, then I think I'm just trying to find a great trajectory of like steps in place. So
Yeah,
if you're a new startup nonprofit, you're low on cash, the best way to try to, I guess, get more brand and markability is to start doing like fundraising events, partnerships with big companies for fundraising events.
you can do that, yes, if you can do that. The problem is not too many people have you might, Michael, because you're you're a football player and you probably are known and maybe have a following, and so you have some notoriety. Most people starting nonprofits don't.
Yeah,
So it's a lot harder for them to raise money.
and the catch here is, until you get your 501c3, it's very hard to raise funds,
Yeah,
or at least apply for the 501c3.
yeah. Although, you could do fundraising events and get donations.
Right, right.
But they won't be able to use them as tax deductions. No, most small nonprofits starting out depend on friends and family or their own resources
Their own
to get
resources.
started, and then start building a network. If you get your friends and family involved and get them to donate, and then maybe they reach out to their networks and get people excited about it and get them to donate, you start building a circle of donors, and then you also start building awareness. And as you do that, then you can start applying for small grants and so forth because you have some credibility, but it takes a while to build that up. So let me see if we have any other. Okay, no, I think we've answered the questions. And I will remind you all that you will get a survey tomorrow or the next day. We're particularly interested in knowing if there are other things that you would like us to focus on in our webinars. So if there's something, say, in the nonprofit world that we're not covering, we'd like to know, and we'd be happy to develop a webinar around that topic. So be sure to answer your survey. So, and we thank you very much for spending this time with us. We appreciate your supporting SCORE, and we hope that we're able to help you in a small way moving your business forward.
And hope to see you next Tuesday at 7 o'clock.
Absolutely. So have a pleasant evening. And you